It is impossible to reflect on the changed state of the American continent without the deepest astonishment. Formerly, it must have swarmed with great monsters. Now we find mere pygmies compared with their antecedent races. What then has exterminated so many species? I could not bring myself to believe a great flood or any other biblical event was the true cause.
Among the ship's crew, I was fast becoming known as the shore-going fellow, since I never missed an opportunity of leaving the Beagle.
Goodbye, Darwin. Good hunting. Cast off.
For me, it was not the sea, but the land, with all its secrets waiting to be unlocked, which held me in wonder and fascination. We made our landfall on the coast of Argentina, some 300 miles south of the Rio Plata. It was a treacherous coastline, with many mudbanks, tenanted solely by large colonies of sea lions.
In many ways, it was fortunate indeed that I was not a fully trained naturalist or geologist. My mind was not yet enclosed within the confines of a single discipline, but was free to wonder and speculate on many things.
Our sudden appearance quite startled the sea lions, rousing them from their slumbers. The sea lions appeared to us to be of a loving disposition, lying huddled together like so many pigs. But even pigs would have been ashamed of the dirt and the foul, all-pervading smell. The females were markedly more elegant and smaller than the bulls, whose time was almost solely devoted to keeping strangers from approaching their female companions. As we moved through the colony, the bull sea lions pursued their territorial disputes, though the lines marking such boundaries were not discernible to our eyes.
It was a remarkable feeling that before us lay over 1,000 miles of uninhabited coastline.
Covington. A single sharp blow is all that's required. Watch again. You see?
Whatever you say, sir. My way we get more pieces.
My way, we get useful pieces. Each one of these layers is a story to tell if you can read it. And each rock in the layers can tell you the date the story took place.
Covington was an odd sort of person, but perhaps from his very oddity, he was well adapted to my purposes. At this time in my life, distinguished men of science were held by me in such awe that it never occurred to me that I might one day become one of their number. I saw my tasks simply in terms of recording and collecting, and I never entertained the hope that something I might find would prove to be a unique discovery.
Covington! There, start digging carefully.
I do not believe I can adequately describe the excitement of unearthing the fossilized remains of creatures long extinct.
It's huge.
We found parts of 3 heads and other bones of the megatherium, of huge dimensions. A great toxodon, one of the strangest animals ever discovered, and a giant armadillo-like creature. It was a most remarkable circumstance that so many different species should be found together, and all within the space of about 200 yards.
It's like a knacker's yard.
It's the oldest knacker's yard in history, if it is.
How old are they?
They're fossilized. Thousands of years.
I never saw anything so huge.
Nor I, Covington. Nor I.
It proved how numerous the ancient inhabitants of this country must have been. But as to why they had all vanished, to be replaced by much smaller creatures, I could only guess. In my imagination, I tried to conjure up the spectacle of these creatures, roaming over the Patagonian wilderness. With their great tails firmly planted on the ground, they could freely exert the full force of their powerful arms and claws. Only the most strongly rooted trees could have resisted such force.
Well, that's astonishing. Quite astonishing.
But this is what makes it even more interesting. Compare the two.
Yeah. Very similar. How long has this been extinct?
Thousands. Many thousands of years, perhaps.
My dear Darwin, you speak with such abandon of thousands of years. If I'm not mistaken, the creation itself was only...
4004 BC, according to Archbishop Usher. I know.
So?
Well, there are many people who don't accept his calculations.
Hmm. You're one of them?
Must be room for doubt.
What do you suppose became of these creatures?
I think they just died out.
Why should God destroy a creature he once thought proper to create?
There must be a reason. Perhaps the climate changed, or the vegetation they depended on disappeared.
I'll give you a reason. They failed to survive the flood.
Possibly.
There's an answer for everything in the Bible if you know where to look for it. It's you who are the future clergyman, remember?
I doubt if I'll make a good one.
As Christmas approached, the Beagle headed south towards Cape Horn. The sea looked ominous, like a dreary, waving plain, and I was overcome once more by the misery of seasickness. There was much worse to come. Once in a man's life, he should behold a storm at sea, with its rising arch and coming fury.
Aye, Captain.
Lesser gales than this had dismasted and foundered many a good ship trying to make the passage of the Horn.
The topsail. Aye, sir.
If she had not been an excellent seaboat, and our tackle in good condition, we should have been in desperate straits. The worst part of the business was not exactly knowing our position. The horizon was narrowly limited by sheets of spray borne on the wind.
Captain. If one of these waves breaks over us, the weight of the water on deck could capsize her.
You have to be on a beam ends for that to be necessary. It's no business to find herself in such a position.
Aye, Captain. Mr. Bay!
Trembling at every shock, the poor little Beagle tried in vain for 24 days to get westward by the outside coast. The men were worn out with fatigue, and at last the captain gave up the attempt and turned north behind false Cape Horn.
As the wind began to moderate, we crossed Nassau Bay in search of a convenient anchorage near the Beagle Channel.
The constancy of Fitzroy's seamanship under those appalling circumstances had been unfailing. His skill as captain of that little man-of-war was beyond all question, and there were none on board who doubted it. He considered it the worst gale he was ever in. We had on board the 3 Indians whom Fitzroy had seized as hostages on his previous voyage. In England, he had given them a Christian education at his own expense. He had called them Jemmy Button, York Minster, and Voyage Basket. It was now his most earnest intention to return them to their own people, and so plant the beginnings of a Christian settlement in this forbidding region of the world. A young missionary called Matthews was to go ashore with them.
It's important you know precisely where you are at all times. Once ashore, you'll only have your memory to guide you, perhaps for many months. Now, I plan to land Jemmy with the Takina tribe here at Woollaya. Then York Minster and Voyager here at March Harbour. I suggest you land with Jemmy.
Whatever you think, Captain.
Then I shall be heading north to survey the western arm of the Beagle Channel. It was given the ship's name on the first voyage. Did you know that?
Yes, Captain.
It's not too late to change your mind, you know. This is a private venture. The Navy's not concerned.
I can't go back on it now, sir. Captain.
This is one of the wildest places on Earth, Matthews. There are other places to be a missionary. The Lord may have called you, but I have brought you here. I have to consider the responsibility.
I'll go on with it, Captain.
Good. Our Voyagians have been away from their homeland for 4 years. Your presence ashore will undoubtedly give my little experiment a much better chance of success. A glass of Madeira, Matthews. It may be some time before you see another. We are all descendants of Adam and Eve, are we not?
Why, certainly we are, Captain.
You see, I have a theory that the further that man has strayed from the Garden of Eden, the further he has descended from a state of grace.
We're a long way from the Garden of Eden down here.
Indeed we are, Matthews. But just imagine, of all the people in the world, if these could be reclaimed for the Lord. What a mighty challenge.
At last, the Beagle found a safe anchorage, and the crew prepared to celebrate Christmas, surrounded by watching eyes.
They've red and white stripes all over their faces.
You want to look, Jimmy?
I see well without glass.
Any of your tribe there?
No, they monkeys, not men.
That's what you looked like when the captain and I first found you, Jimmy. There's more smoke up the mountain.
Signal fires announcing our arrival, I expect.
I doubt if you'd find a lower grade of man anywhere.
You've caught a likeness there, Earl. How does little Voyage Basket compare with the Maori women of New Zealand?
Vastly less handsome, I fear, but I find her quite fetching.
So do the crew, but I think that could be explained by the amount of time we've been at sea.
Problem for the artist is always the same. The damn missionaries insist on natives hiding their natural forms behind hideous European clothing.
You don't have much faith in our Mr. Matthews, do you?
He has his own faith to sustain him. He's hardly in need of mine.
I meant in the task he set himself.
In my experience, a savage receives no benefit from having the Gospels preached at him when his mind is not prepared to receive it.
You would leave them in a state of barbarism?
By all means. Teach him how to build a house or make a nail. But spare him the mysteries of the holy redemption.
Fitzroy would say that you can offer both at the same time.
You know, Darwin, I once saw a missionary in New Zealand expounding on the torments of hell and how all men should walk in fear of damnation. The Maoris laughed out loud. and said they would have nothing to do with a god who delighted in such cruelties. Then they demanded a blanket apiece for having taken the trouble to listen so patiently.
What a region. Summer in December, it's still colder than an Edinburgh winter out there.
Here, have some of this.
Those savages are still out there on the cliffs. I could see a dozen fires right along the bay.
The clans are rising.
Where's the captain? Not celebrating?
He's in his cabin with Matthews, trying to raise his spirits.
Ah, they'll need some raising. It'll take more than the love of the Almighty if that fella's to survive a winter down here. He'll need some more flesh in his flanks and red blood in his veins.
At least they're unlikely to eat him. He wouldn't be worth the firewood.
Maybe he'll surprise you all and become a saint or a martyr.
They're making enough din up there, Sullivan. What's going on?
Oh, it's the beautiful Voyager. She's the toast of the ship's crew. I think they're casting lots for her. One more rum and she'll happily accommodate them all.
Go on, give her one, Grassy. Go on. Go on, give her one. She's ready and willing. Give her one. Go on, give her one. She's right and ready.
That's enough!
He bad man. Very bad. He touched her.
You were interfering with her, Green.
Meant no harm, sir. Just a bit of fun.
No more than that.
No more, sir. She got what she was coming.
Get below. I'll deal with you tomorrow.
Wager. Come on. Calm yourself. Calm yourself. It's all right. It's all right.
As for the rest of you, one double issue of grog, and it's you that behaves like savages. This is supposed to be a Christian festival, not an occasion for a drunken brawl. Now you get below, or I'll have you swabbing the decks all night.
With little idea of what might be awaiting us, next morning we made our final preparations before going ashore.
Why did you all decide that he and Voyager would land here with Jemmy?
I don't know. He may be afraid to be on his own, or he may be up to something.
They're not even his people.
No. Still, it makes it easy for us. Matthews can keep his eye on all three of them.
Who ever heard of wine glasses and fine white linen as being suitable for these latitudes?
I agree with you.
I call it culpable folly and stupidity.
That is the Church Missionary Society's idea of civilized living. But never fear, I've provided Matthews with all the essentials he'll need.
Including a gun?
Including a gun. He doesn't seem much like a hero, does he? But I believe he'll find hidden strengths of character. With God's help.
We're almost ready, Captain.
Very well, Mr. Matthews. Well, Mr. Darwin. Walaya Cove. I'm full of expectation.
Mr. Wickham.
Captain!
As soon as we run ashore, secure the boats, and then mark a boundary line for our encampment.
Aye, aye, Captain.
And place sentries. No native within our perimeter.
We may have to enforce it.
I want no shooting if it can be avoided.
Mr. Sullivan! Sir! Take a party of men with spades and mark a boundary line from the edge of that stream down to the water's edge. You men unload the boats over there. Marines, line up behind the line!
And put a guard on these boats!
Keep the Fuegians together, Matthews.
Marines, stand firm.
Mr. Wickham, the gifts.
Aye, sir.
All right, men, back across the stream.
Well done, philosopher. You're one of them now. You'll have to paint your face. Next, of course, we must find you a wife.
Oh, must we?
Oh, Anata! Oh, Anata!
He's my brother.
And the others, Jimmy?
Sister, mother.
Just about as interesting as seeing two horses meeting in a field.
Even the horses would show more animation.
Coata pukuya.
Speak to him, Jemmy.
What we do, my brother?
Not in English. In your own tongue, man.
Mi padre. ¿Dónde? Yo. Sueño.
Why Spanish, Jemmy? What's wrong? Have you forgotten your own language?
I would not have believed how great was the distance between savage and civilized man. It seemed greater than between a wild and domesticated animal, because in man there is a much greater power of improvement.
Poor Jemmy. He's forgotten his own tongue. His English is very poor and his Spanish still worse. I doubt that any person exists with such a small stock of language.
He makes himself understood well enough.
Without language, how can you have civilization?
He's simply between languages, that's all.
They remind me of wounded animals that we've tamed and nursed back to health.
Yes, perhaps we have. What's wrong with that?
Nothing. But with animals, once they grow used to captivity, you can't return them to the wild again. They lose the instinct for survival.
We're not dealing with animals, my dear Darwin. There is a fundamental difference. Is there not, Matthews?
Animals have no souls, Mr. Darwin.
It's not much good having a soul if you've forgotten how to hunt.
God will provide.
Indeed he will. Jemmy was telling me there's a tribe near here that eat their older women during the hard winters. Seemingly they choke them first by holding them over the smoke of the fire.
You don't suppose our Mr. Button was trying to scare you?
Anyway, if it's a choice between women or dogs, they still prefer to eat the women. Because dog, he catch otter. Old woman, she good for nothing.
A wild and exaggerated tale, Mr. Wickham, and even if it were true, it would be all the more reason for our presence here. Do you think they look like cannibals, Matthews?
No, Captain. I would say they're no worse than I expected. Quite friendly, some of them.
What's the matter, Sullivan? You look distinctly ill.
What is it, man?
I thought I knew this country, but these savages this.
How with it, then?
Over there, across the stream, along the beach, I saw this child. She was carrying a kind of basket full of seagulls' eggs. Suddenly she tripped and fell and dropped the basket. And when her father saw it with the eggs all broken, he flew into a rage. And then, I could hardly believe it, he grabbed her by the legs and dashed her head against the rocks again and again. When he heard my shouts, he just left her there and ran off. He just left her there to die.
There was a degree of mysterious grandeur in mountain behind mountain, with the deep intervening valleys all covered in one thick, dusky mass of forest. The atmosphere likewise in this climate where gale succeeds gale seemed blacker than anywhere else. The entangled mass of forest reminded me of the tropics, yet there was a difference. In these solitudes, death instead of life seemed to be the predominant spirit. What change or catastrophe could have compelled a race of men to leave the fine regions of the north and settle there, in one of the most inhospitable regions within the limits of the globe?
Cart's ready, Captain.
At last. Here comes the wanderer. Come on, man, we have to catch the tide. Another 10 minutes, he would have been keeping Matthews company. You're staying?
I'm staying, Mr. Darwin.
I shall return in about a week.
That will be necessary, Captain. With God's help, we shall build a Christian community here.
Have faith in the power of your pistol too, Matthews. These natives respect neither property nor life.
I protect him, Mr. Darwin. I protect him against bad people.
What have you got in there?
4 rows of potatoes, 2 of carrots, turnips, peas, and over there, onions, lettuces, leeks, and cabbages.
By next spring, you should be self-sufficient.
I have a letter here. Will you deliver it for me back in England, Mr. Darwin, if I don't return? It's for my father.
I will, Matthews, but you'll return, never fear. Stay together for the first few days, or until you can gauge the temper of the natives.
The tide, Captain.
Those devils took 3 more spades and a hammer in the night.
God be with you, Matthews.
And you, Captain.
Matthews.
Boats away. Lay your sovereign, Matthews, for the stew pot before next Tuesday.
The inanimate works of nature, rock, ice, snow, wind and water, all warring against each other, yet combined against man, here seem to reign in absolute sovereignty. Almost every arm of the sea was terminated by tremendous and astonishing glaciers, which in these parts come right down to the water's edge, even in summer.
If you want to try climbing up that philosopher, you do it on your own. We're just simple sailors.
You know I'm not to climb the rigging when it's frozen.
Remember our first voyage, Sullivan? The natives stole our boat.
I'm not likely to forget it, sir.
Didn't give much for our chances in these regions. The same thing happened again.
Yes, I wouldn't fancy swimming back to the Beagle in these waters, eh? Be lucky to last 3 minutes.
These vast piles of solid ice, which never melt and which seem destined to last as long as the world holds together, presented a noble spectacle. They were like great frozen Niagaras, cataracts of blue ice, and just as beautiful as moving ones of water. I thought, how tremendous the effect would be of a severe earthquake on a body like a glacier. I could readily believe that the water would be beaten back out of the deepest channel, and returning with an overwhelming force, would whirl about huge masses of rock like so much chaff.
Captain, that ice might collapse at any moment.
Darwin! Come back here!
I've no desire to hold another memorial service in Tierra del Fuego.
No, sir.
Well, what were you doing over there, philosopher? Claiming the territory in the name of the crown? It looked more likely to claim you.
You've just given me an idea, Mr. Wickham.
Whichever of those peaks proves the highest, I shall call it Mount Darwin.
Thank you, Fitzroy.
All of us were anxious to be out of those waters before the onset of winter. But before heading north, Fitzroy was determined to keep his promise to Matthews with a final visit to Walaya Cove.
Matthews? Matthews?
I couldn't have lasted much longer.
What did they do to you?
They robbed me of practically everything. When I wouldn't give them what they wanted, they came at me with stones.
And Jemmy and York? Did nothing to help you?
They were no good against the rest. The others wanted to pluck every hair off my body. I had to keep them away with presents. Another few days, they'd have skinned me.
My brother, he robbed me. What you call that? Man robbing brother.
Mr. Sullivan?
Sir?
Get Mr. Matthews and his belongings into the boat.
Aye, Captain.
Do you want to stay, Jemmy?
Oh, yes, Captain. This is my country. I teach them.
And the others?
Young Mr. All right. Him strong. Him with Voyage.
I shall return next summer. No later.
You see, Jemmy teach them good Christian manners.
It was a melancholy experience leading our Fuegians amongst their barbarous countrymen. There was only one comfort. They appeared to have no personal fears. But I was convinced that whatever other benefits their excursion to England might have produced, it would not bring them happiness.
I suppose it will be taken amiss if I say that I rejoice to have Matthews back amongst us once again.
I think it will, Mr. Rowell. The captain's already of the opinion that you set about undermining the venture from the start.
I made no effort to change the course of events. I never even went ashore. I'm a simple artist. I record what I see.
An artist, but not simple.
Am I obliged to smother my opinions for the sake of the captain? I consider missionary zeal in any form to be one of the plagues of our civilization. To see man in tune with nature is a beautiful and noble sight.
Noble? Those wretches fighting over scraps of cloth.
You would rather see the Beagle in full sail.
Indeed I would.
But that too, Mr. Wickham, is a true union of man and nature.
I'll tell you this, Mr. Rowell. Argument never leads to harmony aboard a small ship.
Ah, there we can agree.
Once more, the Beagle retraced her steps and headed back into the Atlantic. Fitzroy was not yet satisfied with our charting off the coast of Argentina. It began to look as if it could be 5 long years before I would see my family again.
Dearest. Uncle Robert.
My dear Emma.
How was your journey?
Well, you know my feelings about journeys of any kind, even to see you. I don't know who protested the more, myself or the horse.
Father is waiting for you in the drawing room, Uncle. Oh, what news of Charles?
We get regular demands for more money, usually some 5 months after they've been written. I take the view that his circumstances are bound to have improved a little in that time. All else matters are so desperate that any financial assistance offered now will arrive too late. The proper course of action is to do nothing.
Oh, I cannot believe you. It is very nearly the truth. I'm going to take Catherine for a walk in the garden. We'll see you later.
The proper thing to do in such a day.
It's not the money, is it? I mean, it's not a fortune. No, of course. Money's not important. It's a trifling thing. What worries me is that there's nothing of substance there. Is there any real point in a schoolboy adventure which lasts 2 or 3 years? His last letter. He asked for a box of Promethean matches with which to impress the natives of Tierra del Fuego. Highly scientific. I saw Professor Henslow the other day. He takes a very different view of Charles's activities. Henslow seems to have usurped the role of chief mentor to my son. I resent it. No, you don't. You know perfectly well that advice from outside the family can be highly valuable. Oh. But very well. What did Henslow have to say? Well, apparently some of these specimens that Charles has been sending back to Cambridge are quite unique. Fossilized skeletons and the like. Old bones. Charles seems to have found evidence of an extinct species of South American horse, and a camel-like creature with clearly defined claws. Whatever next? Dragons and unicorns, no doubt. The scientific world is greatly impressed, Robert, and you are pretending not to be. Remember, a prophet is never received in his own country.
Does he write to you sometimes? Of course not. He's probably forgotten that I ever existed. Papa's heard once or twice. He sounded so full of enthusiasm. He's not missing any of us at all.
All those men cooped up in that little ship, it's hard to imagine. With no one to wash their shirts or run errands for them.
What will he do when he comes home?
I suppose he'll have to settle down in a country parish somewhere. Unless he decides to become a sea captain instead of a parson.
Somehow I can't imagine him ever settling down.
He's not the same. You can tell from the way he writes.
How do you mean?
It's hard to explain. He's just as amusing and enthusiastic about everything. It's just that...
What?
I don't know. He's more forthright, more certain about things.
February 1834. We were bound once more for Tierra del Fuego. A full year since we first saw its coast. But none of us were prepared for such a complete and grievous change.
Not a single sign of humanity. Nothing. Prepare to make sail, Mr. Wickham.
Aye, aye, sir. Mr. Bosun, prepare to make sail.
Aye, sir.
Captain, canoe off the port beam.
York or Jemmy, sir?
No. Give him some presents, Mr. Sullivan, and let's be underway.
Aye, Captain.
Fitzroy, look.
Good God. It's Jemmy.
Hey, Jemmy boy. Jemmy. Oh, where do you get all this here? What you done with your best boots, Jemmy?
Jemmy! What is it, Jemmy?
I shame Captain Fitzroy.
May, your jacket. There. You're not naked now, Jimmy.
And York Minster and Voyage basket, where are they, Jimmy?
York, he wicked man. He is savage. He steal all my clothes. He steal everything. Cruel to Voyage. He take her back to his own country. She don't like me stay here. She want me go back to Kano.
You married, Jimmy?
She my wife. She frightened. I stay with you. I brought present. For you, Captain. Other skins.
Thank you, Jemmy. Very fine.
Mr. Darwin, arrows. Arrows for you. I made them for you.
Thank you, Jemmy.
Captain, will you give this to my teacher in Walthamstow? I promise it to him.
Your teacher in Walthamstow? Yes, of course, Jemmy. Jemmy? Jemmy, stay. Come back with us to England. I do not regard it as a total failure. It was on too small a scale. One day, perhaps a shipwrecked seaman may find himself receiving help and kindness from Jemmy's children. The seed may have been sown.